Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's session of the Male Leadership Series at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. This is a part of our MENding webinar series, and today's session is going to be geared towards grades 7 through 8. So before we get started, I thought it'd be awesome to just kind of go around and introduce the facilitators that we have here today. I'll start with myself. My name is Lucas Schaefer. I'm the MENding Program Coordinator at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. Alicia, would you like to go next?
Certainly. Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Fisher. I'm the Prevention Education Supervisor with the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. And Holden.
Yeah, I'm Holden Lowe's. I'm a second-year biology student at Trent, and I'm a new MENding volunteer.
Awesome. Let me just get started. So, what are we going to be talking about today in today's webinar? Well, we're going to be starting off with who we are and what we do at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center, going over what programs we run and what services we provide. Then we're going to be talking about what is a leader and who are our leaders that we see in our everyday lives. We're going to be going over the different kinds of leaders and asking ourselves what responsibilities that they hold. And then we're going to be talking about, after we learn about what a leader is, what makes someone a good leader, talking about the different qualities and attributes that make someone more than just a leader, but a good one. Then we're going to be reflecting on some of the pitfalls and challenges that male leaders face sometimes, and talking about how we can kind of keep those challenges and pitfalls in mind and avoid them and be awesome male leaders. Then we're going to be asking ourselves, are we male leaders? Are we leaders? And how can we be good male leaders? Finishing up by going over some different supports and resources that can continue your learning in what it means to be a great male leader, and different crisis supports as well. So, who are we and what do we do at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center? We're a not-for-profit feminist organization based in Peterborough, 150 King Street, and we service the Kawartha Lake City, Northumberland, and Halliburton. We support people who are impacted by sexual and gender-based violence. We support all genders at our center, including men. We provide individual and group counseling for youth and adult survivors and their supporters. Something that we do in the center is something called psychoeducation, which is where our counselors and other people that work at our center talk to the loved ones of the survivors of gender-based and sexual violence that come to our services, and inform them on what trauma is, how it affects the body, and how we can be the best loved ones we can be for the people who have experienced sexual and gender-based violence in their lives. We also have advocacy and accompaniment services. So if you're a survivor trying to navigate the different resources and options available to you in just like responding to the harm that's been done, we have awesome people at our center to help navigate your journey in like finding the services that you need. If you need to make an official report, we could be there for you. On the public education and prevention education side of things, we go out into the community just like we are now and talk about leadership, right? Consent, masculinity, how do we have healthy relationships? How do we be active bystanders, right? And we talk to a variety of different audiences of different ages, ranging in elementary, secondary schools, universities, colleges, workplaces, everywhere. And a part of the public education that we provide at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center is the MENding Program. And that is a male ally leadership program that engages men in ending gender-based violence. And how we do that in that program is we learn about what gender-based violence is, what being a man means, and what is masculinity, and how that intersects with gender-based violence. We talk about consent and how do we have healthy relationships. And then we talk about how we can apply that knowledge to be active interveners into the instances of gender-based violence that we have and see in our everyday lives. Then at the end of the program, we teach the participants and facilitators of the program how to take this knowledge and teach it in their everyday lives, and eventually maybe even facilitate the program. Super cool. We also offer 3 different crisis supports at the center. We have a crisis text line, a phone line, and a web chat. And those numbers will be able to be provided at the end of the presentation. So stay tuned.
One really cool thing about the MENding program is that we also work very closely with the Peterborough Peach for the OHL on side. And I know Lucas has actually gone up to numerous hockey teams and done presentations with them, which is pretty cool.
Thanks so much, Alicia. We also have the Young Men Leading Change program, which is similar to the MENding program, except it's tailored to racialized and newcomer folks. We have our awesome star facilitator, Takoni, who leads these sessions, which are 8 2-hour sessions and include an awesome project that the participants are able to do and really enact that change that they've just learned about. Yeah. So like if you wanted to register, if you're a racialized or newcomer man, you are interested in talking about what gender-based violence is, what it means to be a man, what is consent, and how we have healthy relationships, and how we can enact that change and be the agents of change that we want to be, email me at lschaefer@kawarthasac.ca to register. So we're going to be starting off this webinar by asking ourselves, what is a leader? And who are our leaders that we see in our everyday lives? If you're an educator watching this, this is a time where you can pause the webinar and ask the men in your room, what is a leader and who are our leaders? So when I think about what a leader is, I automatically think about just like, it's just someone that I look up to and someone I aspire to be. It's someone who I recognize has a lot of power and influence in my life and has a lot of responsibilities attached to that power. Holden, what's the first thing you think of when you're asked, what is a leader?
I think of somebody who's like strong-willed and calm in not calm situations. I think that in terms of strength, not necessarily physically strong, but mentally and emotionally strong, like stable, and somebody who's able to turn bad situations into good ones and get the best out of the people that they're leading.
Right? Kind of just like understanding how people are like looking up to them and wanting to model being strong and stable. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Holden. Alicia, what do you think of when someone asks you, what is a leader?
Yeah, for me, I just think of someone that everyone looks up to and aspires to be because they listen to everyone. There's someone that people can really trust and lean on. There's someone in a group that like everyone kind of can trust because that individual is vulnerable and they can also be vulnerable to them too.
Well said, right? Like it's just someone that you like to be around and want to listen to, 100%. So now I want us to reflect on the variety of different places and ways that we kind of learn about leaders and their teams, right? Starting off with social media, like we see images and instances of people leading all across social media, whether it be like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, right? But more in the kind of physical physical world, we have people who are our families, our friends, our coaches, our teachers, right? We see, and then back onto the digital world, we see instances or images of like leaders on movies, right? And we see leaders and have musicians as leaders, right? Like these people are just people that have lots and lots of social influence and have a lot of followers and teams, right? So we're going to be focusing a lot more on these kind of personal and physical relationships today. But if you're more interested in digital relationships with role models or male leaders, we have another awesome webinar that you can check out. So when I was growing up, and even still today, the first thing that jumps to my mind when I think about what a leader is, I think about superheroes, right? There are people with just an incredible amount of power, whether it's like super physical strength, incredible intelligence, the ability to fly, the ability to swim. I'm looking at Aquaman. These people have so much power and they're held to this kind of high standard where they have to use that power well to either lift up, support, and protect the communities that they have, or stop different evils that are happening, right? But moving more into kind of the physical relationships that we have and the different kind of ones that maybe we can relate more to it, relate more with. What are the responsibilities of teachers? Maybe Holden can speak to this, and then Alicia can add to this as well.
I think that aside from being that strong, stable physical presence at the front of the classroom, I think that teachers hold a great influence on youth, right? Because they um, are not only teaching them to be good students and learning how to do math and English and whatever else they may be teaching, but that to make sure that these kids grow up to be good and effective people in society, right? So
Totally. Like that's a huge responsibility. Absolutely. Alicia, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, certainly. And these teachers and educators, people in our classrooms are people that we interact with, 5 times a week if there's no snow days and stuff. And these are folks that not only are the knowledge holders of what you're learning about, but also someone that you may be trusting and confiding in. When you're having a really tough day, teachers are the ones that are going to listen to you and support you where you are at, right?
Hmm. Thank you. Like how like that responsibility kind of flows outward a little bit more than just being able to teach someone. You're responsible for being like a warm and like stable person or someone that can listen to you. Thank you.
Yeah, like I think about like one of my favorite teachers, sorry to jump in.
No worries.
And this teacher wasn't like an A plus plus plus, academic hardcore kind of teacher, but
Mhm.
she was a teacher that just really listened and really like empathized with me where I was at in my life and really like was cool, and like was with it. That was like my favorite teacher.
Totally, right? And I think that's awesome that you're able to remember that person's influence, right? That really shows like who are the people that we like remember, right? It's the people that are cool and are awesome and supportive, right? Just like that teacher. They're not necessarily like an A plus academic, like I'm gonna make sure that you all get A pluses, but they were there and they were rad. Awesome. What are the different responsibilities that team captains and coaches have? Uh, yeah, maybe Holding can speak to this, and then maybe Alicia can speak out.
yeah, from a player's perspective anyway, you kind of look up to your team captains, or not even necessarily captains, but just teammates that have that leadership presence, and they
Mhm.
kind of are like a middleman between the coach and the other players, because at times the coach can be difficult to approach just in terms of intimidation and stuff. But when I look back to some of the things my coaches have said to me, one of the biggest thing that stuck with me was that it's more than just a game. Like that quote really stuck with me, because when you're playing sports, and these coaches, they're not just teaching kids how to be good athletes and how to win games, but they're playing a massive role in the qualities that these kids take forth in life and how they develop as human beings. So
Totally, Holden. Like, I think sportsmanship is like a wonderful quality that sports like really facilitates and emphasizes, right? A sense of fairness, a sense of healthy competition. It's awesome. Alicia, maybe do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, certainly. With and oh goodness, I think I've just lost the thought. But just with coaches, yeah, that's it. That they kind of lay that foundation for the rest of your life, right? Like as good of a player as Sidney Crosby is, Sidney Crosby would not be who Sidney Crosby is without a good coach and without a good team, right? So
Mhm.
it's that foundation that coaches lay really kind of early throughout your life that really projects you in potentially a career, right? And so you want a coach that's going to be working with you, not being like, okay, this is what you have to do, but really like honing in on your strengths. Like I'm sure if Sidney Crosby's coach was like, cool, go be a goaltender, we may not know Sidney Crosby as he is today, right? You really have to kind of focus on like what people's individual strengths are and how that can all come together as a team.
Wow, well said, Alicia. Thank you so much. And what are the different responsibilities that family members have, right? Whether it's your father, your mother, your uncle, your grandfather, your grandmother. What are these people's like responsibilities? Maybe Holden can go first, and then Alicia.
I think that as a leader, it's important to be aware of the influence that you do have. Like, as you can see in these pictures, like even the one on the top left there, I'm assuming that's a father or a brother or some kind of influence on that young girl's life. But you can see that he's got that smile on his face, and she does too, right? Because she's enjoying doing the homework, because maybe he's building that atmosphere for her. So when she goes to do it alone, she'll remember those times and be able to turn something into a positive. So it's just that influence factor, I think.
Totally. Alicia, did you have something to add?
Certainly, yeah. Since we're in grade 7 and grade 8, those initial family connections that we had with like our fathers, our brothers, our grandfathers, those are very important to our growth and stuff. I know when we talk to the Peterborough Petes, a lot of them talk about their father, their grandfathers, and their uncles as someone that they really look up to for guidance and support, as like one of the men in their lives that they look up to. And so, these are really important relationships in our lives, but being grade 7 and grade 8, those are starting to shift over time, right? And so we may be focusing more on our friends. Maybe we're focusing more on the connections we have over social media. And so it's important to know that just because those relationships are shifting in our lives, where our friends are maybe becoming more important than our family is, that our family is still there for us.
They're the people that we come home to, right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Alicia. And talking a little bit more about friends, right? What are the responsibilities that our friends have in our lives? Holden, maybe you can go first, and then Alicia.
Yeah, it's a little bit stereotypical, but I think that to be like a rock in your friend group, so to speak, because like somebody who is that stable, sound, approachable person can help really hold a friend group together and build and further your relationships with your friends. And yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Totally. Yeah. Alicia, did you have something to add?
Yeah, certainly. Our friends are super important as someone that we can really talk to and can open up to whenever we're having problems, right? And so, what makes a good friend group is where everyone can kind of be themselves and be who they want to be, right? And not every single person is the same, and so not forcing people to look and act and dress a certain way. But a friend is really someone that you can just that cares for you and that you also care for them. And obviously these photos are taken pre-COVID times. But our friends are certainly a great resource for someone to talk to. But if we're having more serious problems going on in our lives, our friends may also know other trusted adults that we can talk to if we're ever having problems, right? So a friend is someone who also knows when kind of this is a bigger problem, right? So whenever we're like experiencing issues in our lives, our friends can be that great initial resource, but our friends may know of other like trusted adults to reach out to as well.
That's a really good point, Alicia. Like your friends know you, so they can kind of like notice things that maybe people who aren't as close to you wouldn't be able to see right away. Thanks, Alicia. All right, so now that we've kind of just reflected on the varieties of different leaders that we have in our lives and the different responsibilities that they're held to, we're going to ask ourselves now, what makes someone a good leader? And what are the qualities of good leaders? So if you're an educator watching this webinar, this is a time where you're able to pause the webinar and ask the men in your group, what makes someone a good leader? And what are the qualities of good leaders? So what different like social psychologists have discovered is that we have an important faculty that we have when we grow up to reference other people, right? So it's super important for our early childhood development that we have these kind of primary caregivers in our lives that we can look to in instances where we're still learning our environment and we're trying to figure it out. We base our own responses and our own actions by looking at how other people are responding, right? Am I supposed to be scared in the situation? Am I seeing scary faces, like, right? Or am I seeing happy and smiling faces, right? So that's just one of the ways, and what that's called is social referencing, right? So when we act and speak and otherwise live our lives, we look for these cues of like how we should be acting based on other people, right? And an additional element that I want to talk about is a now kind of, you may have heard of this, a now infamous experiment called the Milgram experiment. And what this was, the kind of result of this study, without getting too into the details, maybe your educator can talk about this later on, but this study kind of like revealed that people have a tendency to diffuse personal responsibility to authority figures, right? That I'm not going to be attributed with like the kind of consequences of this action because I'm listening to someone who has more power and social influence than me. So this really informs what good leaders should do. So maybe Holden can lead this slide, and then we can continue on.
Yeah, I think that looking at this anyway, one thing to take into consideration is that at times actions speak louder than words, right? So I think that the best leaders are the ones who are aware of their leadership status and lead by example and do the right thing. A firsthand example of this would be, helping somebody alone on the playground, right? Like you see somebody who's out of a friend group, and then somebody that isn't or is looking up to you, the younger grades might see that and do the same thing for somebody in their grade, right? So it's kind of like a chain reaction. So I don't know if Lucas wants to add anything.
Totally. Like I love what you were saying about like leaders kind of like putting this practice into action, right? They are like conscious and recognize the social powers that they have to other people, and then model that, right? They go, okay, I want people to help other people on the playground when they need help. So I'm going to model that for other people so that I can change the environment and the culture that happens at playgrounds, right? I'm going to allow people to see me doing something good so that they can do something good. I think that's rad. Maybe Alicia has something to say about this. No? Awesome. So the additional element that I want to talk about is what men can do in leadership roles. So in our society's history, male voices are often given more value than the voices of women and people who aren't men, right? They're kind of given this presumed authority that men are going to know how to lead and what to do, so we should just listen to men. And this kind of emphasizes and interacts with toxic masculinity, right? The idea that there's only one way to be a man. And additionally, like in cases of male leadership, that there's one way to be a male leader. And that is often kind of this very assertive, dominating, commanding person who always gets the job done without listening to other people, very independent, assigning tasks without caring about strengths and limitations and challenges, right? So something we can kind of avoid doing as male leaders into this kind of pitfall and tendency is to amplify and promote the voices of those who don't receive this kind of assumed authority that men do in our society, right? So we have to be conscious of the space we're taking. Am I the only one talking, right? Who hasn't gotten an opportunity to talk? And how can I listen and incorporate what they're saying into the conversation, right? And after you do that, you have to be open to the input that people are saying, right? It takes one thing to provide that opportunity for people to speak, but then you got to listen to it. And if what they're saying is like contributing and maybe is allowing the team to achieve this end that they're trying to share together and get together, then give that opportunity to them to lead and control the course of the conversation. Maybe Holden can say something about this if he's able to.
Yeah, I think personally about like the scale, like when you think of a president, he has the vice president. When you think of a team captain, there's assistant captains, and it's applicable for ships and everything else, right? So I think that the best leaders are the ones that value others' opinions and are able to take everybody's opinion into consideration, because I feel like you get the maximum result out of something.
Totally, yeah. Lisa, do you have something to add?
Certainly, yeah. And so, looking back at those experiments and how I think with the baby, it was like walking across a glass plane, right? And that if the parent was very encouraging, the baby would walk across the glass plane like it was nothing, right? And so, those role models, those relationships that we have, those leaderships that we look up to are rooted as soon as like we're young, right? And so we really tend to trust the people around us. And so as a leader, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit, like you do hold a lot of power, but it's really important that you're like listening. Like if you're for the toddler one, if your toddler doesn't want to walk across a glass pane, maybe forcing them to do that's not going to be okay. And like that Stanley Milgram experiment where someone in a bit like the research was like, okay, like press the button, which may cause harm. Like listening to that it can be really upsetting, right? And so it's really important that you understand the type of power that these leadership roles have, and that if you are a leader, that we're making sure we're listening to everyone.
Thanks, Alicia. Awesome. So now we're going to be asking the ultimate question. Are we leaders, and how can we be good male leaders? What can we do as men to make sure that we're setting a good example for other guys? If you're an educator watching this webinar, this is an opportunity where you can pause the webinar, ask the men in your classroom, are we leaders, and how can we be good male leaders? Spoiler alert. The answer is yes. We are leaders in other people's lives. And I think sometimes we can forget the incredible value and influence that we have on each other, right? When we've been talking about the varieties of different leaders that we have in our lives, whether it be teachers, friends, parents, uncles, grandmothers, like we need each other to develop and navigate and grow. So believe it or not, people look up to you. And that means that you're a leader too. And that is awesome because throughout our lives, even when we're younger, there will always be people who look up to us, right, for guidance. And we can be leaders for everyone, our friends, our family members, for our entire classroom, and for the people that we play sports and video games with, right? And that really reveals and shows like how important other people are, right? That like you kind of can't go about this whole life thing and growing up alone. You kind of need this input and shared value that other people are able to provide and that you have on other people as well, right? That I have the power and you have the power to make other people's days, right? Kind of like what Alicia was talking about with that super awesome teacher, right? That person probably made that grade like fun and awesome and something that Alicia would look forward to. Maybe Alicia can speak to this.
Sure, yeah. And like, you know, being grade 4 and 6, that teacher was actually my grade 5 teacher, right? So, which is like not that long ago. So, but like as you know, being in grades 7 to 8, you know, we are like the intermediate students at the school, right? Like at a lot of the schools, it goes up to grade 7, grade 8. And so you have an entire school that is looking up to you to see what you're doing, right? Like you are role modeling behavior that is really, really valuable to the people in the lower grades. And so, you know, you may not feel as if that you have a lot of power, but you in a way do, right? You are the leaders of the school, and people are seeing what are the grade 7 and 8s doing, right? Like you're the top athletes of the school, you're the smartest people in the school. And so, you know, with this isn't something that anyone asked for, but it's certainly kind of like a privilege that you have, right? To be able to influence kind of everyone in your school to be supportive.
Wow, it is a privilege to have this influence in other people's lives, right? It's awesome, and we got to use that privilege, that gift, really, really well. Holden, do you have something else to add to this?
There's not much I could add. That was awesome.
Thanks, Holden. Wow. All right. So now keeping this in mind, right, just the incredible influence and value that we have in other people's lives, how can we recognize this value and be good male leaders? Like Alicia was talking about a little bit earlier, we can avoid having to like into this tendency where we kind of shut out other people's voices, right? That we have to avoid having to be this kind of smartest guy in the room who knows what to do in every single instance, right? Turns out we're going to be learning a lot from other people who like we're leading, right? It's kind of this mutual peer-driven thing, right? Leaders are never alone in that sense. Leaders are never alone. And there's someone who like lets teams and the people that they're leading and surrounded by help solve problems with them, right? There's someone who recognizes that people are going to be looking up to them, leading, and they use that power well. Maybe Holden can speak more to this, and then Alicia.
Yeah, I think that good leaders are the ones that talk with people, not at them.
Mm,
So I think that just that inclusiveness and making everybody feel that their opinion is valuable, not only is valuable to the people you're leading, but it's valuable to you because you get different opinions and approaches to all kinds of different situations. So
totally.
a win-win.
Thanks, Holden. Maybe Alicia can finish off this slide.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about being like the smartest guy in the room and the challenges that Iron Man faced, right? Like Iron Man may at times felt as if he was the smartest and like most like hardcore kind of character, but he relied on his scientists, he relied on the government, he relied on support from his wife. Is it his wife? Yeah. Wife, his supporters, right? So it's really like a team effort. And like I haven't seen the latest I don't know, the movie where everyone comes together and everyone uses their own strengths in different ways. Holden's like, oh my God. So, right, like but one superhero couldn't do it alone, right? And so it's so important to bring a whole team together and to use everyone's strengths, right? Like Aquaman may be really good with someone who is like if they're fighting like over the water or someone with fire, but Aquaman may not beat someone who is also a water thing. I don't know, like you need to like hone on people's strengths. Holden, I know you had a really good example of how you're a leader in your own life with a certain fluffy creature.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that, yeah, you're a leader to your pets, right? Like there's nothing more satisfying than teaching your dog how to shake a paw with a treat. And although that might just seem like something short term, like that's you influencing their behavior. Like you're helping form the animal they are and are becoming, right? So I think that that's a very relatable real life example of how you're a leader.
Totally, right? Thank you so much for adding that, Holden. Before we move on, I just want to mention that like we've been talking a lot about strength, right? And a quality that I think pairs really, really well with strength is vulnerability. Recognizing the places where maybe Alicia was talking about like we aren't going to be as strong, right? Aquaman's going to have a difficult time battling foes or doing things above the water and also in the air, right? He can't fly, so maybe that's not a strength of his, and he can recognize that and recognize what he's able to go to, right? So it's kind of being recognizing of the things that you can't speak to or recognizing the things that you can't do as well and encouraging others to help fill those gaps because it's a team. Awesome. And if you want to continue your learning, there are so many different resources that we have to keep this conversation about male leadership going. An awesome example of male leadership on the furthest left of the screen is Jackson Katz, an awesome prevention education and anti-racist educator who talks about how we need to have all people engaged in ending gender-based violence, including men, and that men need to become more active in this prevention, right? We also have the White Ribbon Campaign, an organization that was a response to a very historical instance of gender-based violence that you might be familiar with, the Polytechnique massacre, which was a blatant anti-feminist, very misogynistic kind of instance that maybe your teacher can go into a little bit more later, and encourages men to kind of, as Jackson Katz was doing, step in and become agents of change to prevent this violence. Then we have the Moosehide Campaign, which was inspired by Indigenous folk on the Highway of Tears, right? Something that is historically a place where Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit peoples.
Continue.
Yeah.
It's not historical.
Thank you, Alicia. To face very gruesome violence, right? And that we need to step in and recognize this violence and act in light of that as well, right? This ongoing violence. We have the Next Gen Men Agency, which is an awesome thing that's very similar to the MENding Program and Male Ally Leadership Program. They have an awesome website where they have lots of articles that you can learn and read up on.
And card games about cards for masculinity.
Thank you so much, Alicia. They have this awesome kind of card game that kind of gets conversations that you don't normally have as a guy started, asking us what are vulnerable moments in your life and other things like that. Then we have Heads Up Guys, which is an organization that talks about like concerns with men's mental health, right? Recognizing that men experience poor mental health and mental illness as well, and that their suicidality is greatly increased over other genders, right? And what we can do in light of that. What are the different narratives that promote this kind of violence that men turn towards themselves, and how can we end that? Awesome. We covered a lot in this webinar today, so we're just gonna make sure that we go over this before we close out. Holden, would you like to lead these key points?
Sure. We'll go over them real quick. I think that some things that I learned from this, and hopefully everybody else did too, is that a leader is someone who people look up to and help guide people towards a goal. Leaders in different roles have different responsibilities to their teams. Good leaders are honest, open, and understanding. Sometimes male leaders can forget about the value of other perspectives, and we are leaders and we can be great male leaders. So.
Thanks, Holden. And we have these crisis supports that we offer at the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. We have a text line, a phone line, and an online web chat. If you don't have enough time to write down the phone numbers that you see on the screen now, or you can't see them, they are all available at the KawarthaSexualAssaultCenter.com. If you're an educator watching this webinar, we would please implore you to fill out the survey that accompanies these webinars to provide feedback to make sure that this male leadership webinar series can be as awesome as it can be. We need your feedback, and thank you so much for making this webinar series better for everyone. Awesome. So before we close out, I want to encourage the different facilitators to kind of have last words about like something that was missed out or that they want to emphasize again. Maybe Holden can go first and then Alicia.
Yeah, we touched on it in the key points there. I think that the biggest thing that I took from it anyway was that leaders can be vulnerable too, right? Like just because you're a leader and just because you know that other people are looking up to you doesn't mean that you don't have things that you need to talk about too, right? So it's okay to bounce back and forth off your peers and build that relationship.
Definitely. Thanks, Holden.
Certainly, yeah. And we know that sometimes there are people in positions of power that cause harm, right? And so it's important to know that there are a variety of resources and people that you can talk to. And that may seem really kind of icky and gross to have to like rat on someone for harming you or hurting you, right? And so we've seen plenty of things come up about coaches, about family members, educators, peers causing harm. If harm is happening, please know that there are people that you can talk to and that you will not get in trouble for having to talk to someone about a harm that's happening to you. This is something that certainly happens to young men as well. And I know a lot of narratives and a lot of the way we talk about gender-based violence and sexual violence tends to be about women, but this is certainly something that can harm young men like yourselves too. So please know that there are resources out there.
Wow, thank you so much, Alicia. Awesome. So we want to thank you very much for tuning in and listening to all of us today, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.